All right, I want to officially welcome you to tonight's session where we'll be discussing metadata and data cataloging. Yeah. I hope you can see my screen. All right. So we'll try to understand what metadata is. Last time we talked about master data, and today we're talking about metadata. So in last session, we said master data is the most valuable data entity, most valuable, the most important. But this time we're talking about metadata. We're talking about data is not whether they are the most important, whether they are the least important. We still need to talk about all data. Going to be trying to understand what data is. Yeah, that is it. A data, what it is, a single data here, a unit data, what it is. We try to understand it and how to govern and preserve them and use them. Every data, how do you use what it is, where does it come from, what does it stand for, how do you use it, how do you preserve it, how do you manage it, how do you comply, what are the tools. So that's what we're going to be trying to understand tonight. So we're starting with metadata, what it is. What it is, metadata is like trying to understand a single data. What is a data, where it comes from, how it's structured, who owns it, how should it be used, how sensitive is the particular data. That's what we mean by metadata. Kind of trying to look into a data with a microscope, try to understand it, looking at it like a microorganism to understand every characteristics. How does that data, what does it represent? That is what that metadata is. Example here is a customer date of birth. When you look at customer date of birth, from the angle of metadata, we're going to be looking at date type. Data type is date. That is the data type. And we'll look at the format. What is the format? You're looking at it. In some date of birth, you find out that the day, the month comes first before the year. As you're looking at the format here, you see that year comes. So you have to state the format in which your organization want to capture their own data. Source, where is the data coming from? You can see it says from CRM system. You see who owns that particular data, head of customer operation. Then you see how sensitive is that data. It's personal data and it's very, sensitive, high risk if anything happened to it. So that's what that metadata is all about. And equally, we'll talk about the retention. How long can we keep this data within our database? So let's look at different types of metadata. We have technical metadata. Under technical, it comes with table, column, and schema structure and database relationship. Is used primarily for the IT engineers. Technical metadata, they use it mainly when they are trying to do data mapping, data APIs, all this engineering, trying to share data from one system to another system. They use this kind of technical metadata. So we want to see business metadata. So it's more about business definition, the meaning, the KPIs, and gross rate terms. So this is more like a normal understanding of, not from the technical point, from the business point of view. Example here, we have active customer, which defines as a customer with at least one transaction within the last 90 days. That is business data. Then we have operational metadata. This metadata within the operations data refreshes time, processing log, error rate, and the data lineage. So this is from the operations point of view, using data on daily basis of operations. We try to understand data from that angle. If you want to refresh a page to see how fast trying to retrieve a data, processing log, error rates. Yeah, so it happens like that. Like now, there's a data, a site I've been trying to log in since morning and it's not been possible. So these are kind of operational data we're talking about. Governance metadata, this is where most of us are going to become owners here. So data owner, data steward, classification level, compliance tag. So this is critical for regulatory compliance and risk. So if you want to be a data governance or data professional, you must understand where the metadata you work with, where it belongs, and how. But we need to understand, because we data governance professionals, we govern. There is no limit to the amount of data we govern within the organization. So that is metadata. It's not if you just understand it, I just you trying to understand a data as an entity. Trying to understand a data as an entity. So with that background, we are going to then start looking at cataloging. What is data catalog? Now we understand data as an entity, characteristics of a data, and that is metadata. So what is data catalog. A data catalog is a central inventory of enterprise data, asset enriched with metadata. So look at it as a classification of data in a system, or even if we can even use Excel, but it's going to be a classification to show data representation, visualization of data, you know, in an enterprise asset. You can use, we'll have different tools for data cataloging, but you can equally do it simply with just Excel sheet. Most organizations use our enterprise application, which are the tools we are going to look at next week. We're going to look at tools we use for cataloging. So think of catalog as Google for enterprise data. It allows users to discover data sets, understand context, check quality, identify ownership, and evaluate compliance risk. So it's trying to make this metadata accessible, having it, being able to access it within a central repository. So we catalog it. We cannot, just like in library, let me just use library as an example. You see, if you go to the library, books are classified with so many tags, with so many categories. You can see these are biology books, these are chemistry books, these are... So in data cataloging, with a tool, you classify data so that it can easily be retrieved. So many data here we've seen engineering metadata, we've seen operational metadata, we've seen business metadata. Anybody who wants to access that data, data cataloging will help us to classify them, arrange them, so that people can easily access data they need, because there are different people who are looking for that data. If it's not well cataloged, it's going to take time for you to find a single data you are looking for. And once you have it, it makes everything quick. It helps us to see how healthy. It will help us to see, yes, we have data duplicates. It will help us to see that, yeah, we don't have quality data. That is why data catalog is very, very important. So like I said, data catalog is critical. Without a data catalog, employees find it difficult to find data. They cannot find data because data is not arranged very well. If you go to the library and you want to find a book, and you find out that all the books are heaped, all of them are packed in carton, and just packed one. It's just for you to go and start looking for clothes, for books. Or let's say in your house, you don't have a good wardrobe. You don't put your clothes in hangers. You don't arrange them. All your clothes, you put it in one place. And if you want to go out, you come and start bringing out all the clothes to find. So it's going to take you time. Yeah. So you look at it that way. Or you go to buy a cloth in the market and it's not arranged. So that is the way data is. So if we don't have data catalog, we'll have duplicate data set everywhere. Sensitive data remain unidentified. AI team train on unknown source, and compliance becomes reactive. Compliance should be proactive, not reactive. You should work ahead of preventing compliance breach, working on stopping vulnerability. But if you don't have data catalog, everything will be fire brigade approach when it has happened, which is very risky. But when we have a data catalog, this is the scenario. Data discovery improvement. Governance is enforceable. Risk visibility increases. When we have catalog, that is the only time we are going to see that, yeah, we have a data duplicate. If you go to the, but if you don't have data catalog, they will be scattered different places. You might not know whether there is duplicate or not. But when you have a data well arranged, sequentially, using taxonomy, you find out that everything will be, you can easily spot, yes, we'll have duplicate, and you remove them. And equally, when you are training AI, you are training AI on a specific, you know the data the AI is working on. Yeah, something like that. But it's very, very important. That is the beginning of you trying to arrange your organizational data. If you don't arrange it, then it's going to be difficult for you. For you to have a very good, healthy data governance unit or system or infrastructure, everything needs to be arranged. When there is risk, when something is happening, you know exactly from the category of data sets is happening. And this is why we need cataloging. Core capabilities of cataloging, it helps in data discovery. Data discovery, searchable inventory of data sets, data lineage. You can track how data flow across the system, the origin of data, where is that data is coming from. That's what we call cataloging. Lineage, we mean lineage, data originating from source. With a good data cataloging, you know where data is coming from, where has that data been to, through all the processes where it has system that data has been through. That's what we call data lineage. Lineage, trying to understand the origin. And we have classification and tagging. You help us to classify and tag personal data, sensitive data, financial data, and public data. Ownership and stewardship assignment, clear accountability. When there is a good catalog, we see who is working on, who owns a particular data, and that means accountability, just like racing metrics. Usage and monitoring, we can always track data usage when we have catalog. Integration with third-party application or governance policy, automated compliance check. So these are all the core capabilities, benefits, let's call it benefits, why there should be a data catalog in our organization. As a matter of fact, you cannot build a solid data governance unit without proper data, metadata framework and catalog. Okay, now let's look at the framework, metadata governance framework. These are policies regulation, compliance on you trying to manage your metadata. Framework set the governance policy that you are going to use to catalog, to build your data catalog. I want you to see it that way. You use framework. When you are building a catalog, you are looking at the framework. What does the framework say? It's like a policy, a regulation that will guide you on how to build a compliance data catalog. Framework is not a catalog. Okay, the framework models include metadata standard. Standard. When you are creating a catalog, what is the standard that are going to be the data catalog is going to have? What is the standard? All the metadata in the catalog. You can say naming convention. What is the naming convention? Definition, classification, taxonomy. These are like, when I said, if you want to write a date of birth, you see a date of birth where the name, the year comes first. Some date of birth, you see the day and the month comes before the year comes last. But so it depends. These are you determining, you must determine, because here, if you go to America, they have different naming convention from UK. You know, some you see the naira while trying to, currency, while trying to write a currency. You see some currency, the currency sign comes before the figure. Some comes after. So some of them, they will ask you, do you want the currency signage to come before or after? These are convention. Everybody has their own standard. So you must determine the convention of any particular data depending on, like I use date of birth here and I use currency. So you determine how they are going to appear, and it must all be defined and well classified with tag. That is what we mean by standard. Is the data governance framework that are going to state all this. So once you have the framework, when you then going to be cataloging data, you follow what the framework says. Data ownership is part of the framework. Who owns this data? So when you are cataloging it, you already know what the framework says, and you know how to classify the ownership. Here you have data owner and data steward. You know who owns and who is the steward. Automated metadata capture. How do we capture data? It's part of the rule, the framework. I want to, when you say framework, you are going to be, that's why you see, since we've been here, I've been talking about framework, because what we are doing here is framework. What we are doing here is rules and regulation, compliance, and framework. You see framework as a rule, compliance, regulation. That is framework. In this scenario, once you hear framework, understand it that way. So, automating metadata capture, some will say that our rule or the rule, either our rule or the compliance policy said that this is the way we should capture data, this kind of data. Meaning what? No manual entry. No manual entry. So that's capture. And for instance, I told you guys, if you want to create an account in our web portal, in our course portal, go there and fill the form. You are the one who feed the system with your data. So at no point are you coming to us to blame us for making mistake in your name. I've had a situation, somebody's answer, well, if you are the one that did that registration and enrollment, and were you sleeping when you did the enrollment? You tell me that there's a mistake on your name. How many of you here makes mistake on your name? I don't get it. How you can make mistake writing your name? Perpetual. How many times have you made mistake writing your name?
Sir?
How many times have you made mistake writing your name?
Where, sir?
Writing your name anywhere they ask you to write your name. How many times have you made mistake?
Uncountable, sir.
You're making mistake, so you don't know the spelling of perpetual.
It just happens, sir. Okay,
No.
even this can happen.
Oh, no. Well, in a situation where you've not been able to pay, they've not been able to pay you. For instance, you are trying to make entry, that will determine the payroll. So when your name comes into the payroll and you sign it, for instance, let's look at it this way. You are working for an organization, and at the end of the month, or end of the week, here in UK, we pay per week. And you submit, you go to the payroll and submit your timesheet. And then when the timesheet comes, the payroll officer, based on what is already on the system and the name you put on the payroll, does not tally. And when others are paid, you weren't paid because they couldn't reconcile your name. So whom are you going to blame? You started, I have bills to pay, they did not pay me. Whom are you going to blame? Oluchi, Perpetua. In a situation like that, whom are you going to blame? I'm asking you a question.
I should blame myself because it's an error from her end.
Good. Why I'm saying this is it happens a lot. It happens a lot when people fail to take ownership of their mistakes. And so many times companies do some things to protect their own organization, because customers, they always very smart thing. They will even go to Facebook, this company have not paid me, this. So these are ways of you trying to protect your organization. Your duty here is to protect your organization, and that's why we have some automated data capture. You find out that you write something in a paper and tell somebody to, no, they don't collect it by, just use the system and type, just put so many these companies or banks, you go there and put your name or something like that, it do happen. In a situation they can help you, they see how vulnerable you can write, you can do this. So that one is poor. These are some of the reasons why you see here we use automation. So this is for you to determine where you are going to need automation. Automation is the best way to capture data to avoid data compromise, data quality through automation, not manual handling. Manual handling, in some cases, you see it promote fraud. People start, modifying, changing. So the best quality is to carry out data capture through automation. We have what we call extract, ETL, extract, transform, and load. Even if we capture some data manually, we have at some point before the data goes into the final destination, we have to transform the data and then load it. It's an integration. So these are some of the things we have. Then we'll have API login. API login. You see so many organizations today, they have trusted data source. Google account, your Google account is a trusted data source. Your email, your Facebook account is a trusted data source. So now, if you want to log in, for instance, if I implement this kind of API login, all you need to do is, if you want to sign up in our course portal, all you need to do is click on Google login, and Google will browse your authentic email you have been using over the year, trusted, verified, and we use it to create an account for you. You don't need to go and start typing in and creating email. Just use your Google account. You don't even need to type it. So that is another way, trusted, because it's trusted. And then AI-based classification. Now, because AI is now fast in adoption, so anything we are doing now, we're trying to see how we can integrate it. So these are so many ways under framework. You have to decide the best way to capture quality data for your organization, and then it's going to be part of the framework you are going to create, and whoever is going to build the catalog will follow suit in building the catalog. Continuous metadata auditing, periodic review cycle, data lineage verification, and compliance validation. So you continue to monitor. You have to state how data is going to be continuously managed, continuously reviewed for high quality purposes. Metadata and regulatory compliance. Metadata enable compliance with privacy regulation, that is data mapping, rights to erasure tracking, cross-border data monitoring, and retention policies. Yeah. So privacy, when we talk about privacy, how do you, some data are very sensitive. It cannot be made public. So it's there, but you cannot make it public. We have what we call public data and private data. So when a data is a private data, is encrypted, it cannot be accessed, can only be accessed by an authorized person. But when a data is made public, is meant for public consumption. For instance, now, if you go to Amazon, you want to buy products from Amazon, you see that there, you see the data of the person who is selling. You see the company who is selling under Amazon. You see their name there or the company name and things like that. So because it's a public data that you can see it. If you go to Facebook, our data there is public because we have agreed during the privacy policy that yes, your data should be made public. That's why you go there, people will see your name, people will see your email. Everything there is your duty to decide. They've given you that access to determine how your data is going to be managed. If you want people to see your date of birth, people will see your date of birth. If you don't want people to see your date of birth, they will not see. It's up to you to see what you hide and whatever you make public, people will see it is a public data and people can see it. People can copy it. People can, for instance, if you, as I am now, they call me from everywhere. Some people who call me from America, from Canada, from UK, from Ireland, from Nigeria, because I've made my data, my phone number public. People can see it. When people want to make an inquiry, they can call me. I'm not going to ask you, how did you get my number? I've never asked anybody, how did you get my number? Because my data, my phone number is public. I made it public. So it's part of the regulatory compliance. Right to erasure, cleaning the data, yeah, it's part of it. You decide which data set that can be erased. And cross-border data monitoring, when data is crossing border, more especially when you are visiting an international website, you are putting data there and things and that, you know that your data set can be crossing from one border to another border, a country or a company that is hosted or being run in another country and you want to access it. So these are the kind of data you monitor, whatever you do. So it's you that decide how that kind of data is going to be managed. A retention policy, how long do you want your data? It's part of what we've discussed this in the other aspects of data, like master data, but we still are doing it here in metadata. Okay. Regulators increasingly expect data inventory, processing record, and impact assessment traceability. So that's why it's good to regulate and be highly compliant on metadata, not master. Metadata and AI governance. AI these days is anything you are doing and you are not putting AI, of course, because it's the future, it's here and it's the future. So any way we will manage data these days, we have to include AI governance. AI is the biggest data set in the world, so we have to know that. AI risk increases when data origin is unknown, sensitive attributes are hidden, and biased sources are undocumented. So if you go to ask AI to solve a problem for you, AI must bring out results for you based on what they lay their hands on. So if the data set AI is using is not authentic, then AI will give you wrong information. So while we try to, because AI, we feed AI, the way we feed ourselves, that's the way we feed AI. What is the food that AI is eating? AI is feeding on data. So it's what we fed AI is the AI is going to use to produce intelligent reports. If you give AI wrong data sets, untraceable data sets with no origin, then AI, that's what AI will give you. And if you use that kind of report, it's going to land you in trouble. So when we have good governance of metadata around AI, what do we get? Data set transparency, lineage traceability, bias source identification, and accountability in model training. Now, we're going to look at enterprise implementation steps while we try to implement enterprise data, metadata within the enterprise. What are the steps? First, conduct enterprise data inventory, classify data assets, assign ownership and steward, deploy data catalog, integrate with governance and risk system, train employees on metadata usage, and monitor continuously. So if you are going to implement enterprise metadata framework, this is sequence of activities. Let's look at this real world scenario case study. A healthcare organization faced a regulatory audit. The problem they have is no centralized, after the audit, they face these challenges. No centralized inventory of patients' data. Unknown data flow across departments. So no data lineage, no centralized data, inconsistent, sensitive labeling. And the audit is, of course, we know that it's going to be failure. So now the impact is audit failure risk, data breach vulnerability, and regulatory exposure. So that's the problem here. That is the impact. And then the solution is going to be to implement enterprise data catalog, map patient data flow, classify high security data, and assign steward. Yeah. These are what you are going to be facing and what you are going to be seeing as a data governance officer or specialist. Once you start work, so when there is this solution, the result is going to be they want audit-ready documentation. They want to reduce privacy risk, and they want strong governance posture. So with this scenario, you are now being challenged as a data governance officer. This is the problem the company is having. You see it, no centralized inventory, unknown data across department, inconsistent sensitivity labeling, and these are going to land them in serious trouble. Now they hire you as a data governance officer, and they tell you, Angela, please help us to implement enterprise data catalog, map patient data flow, and classify high risk data sets and assign steward. So Angela, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Ebere, what are you going to do? Abi all of you now sit down the look. I don't want bench warmers in my class. So you guys are very small, so I know all of your names. You don't know. I'm talking to people, or you people want, I have two methods of teaching. I just come, I don't talk to anybody, I stream and go. If you want to grab it, it's up to you. Don't want to grab it. But you want an interactive class, good and fine. So when I'm talking to you and calling name, I want you to respond. I'm not begging you to respond. That is my pattern of teaching. You don't want to be in my class, interactive class. I stream the class and go. Okay, I think that's what I'm going to do, streaming, because I'm not getting the vibe. All right, based on what I've just said, we're going to use this. We're going to create a framework. We're going to define categories, classification, ownership structure, catalog features, and compliance control. That is the first thing. That is, we need to create a framework first before we can start implementing enterprise catalog. The first thing to do is to create a framework, because the organization here, this is their problem. It means they don't have anything. So if we want to build a catalog, what is the framework? What framework are we going to use to build catalog? So we have to start by building. I told you people that you create a framework. Framework will help you to build your catalog. And now we are in charge to build, and this is the solution they asked us to build here. This is the solution of that problem. But how do you start building it? It is the solution. They say they have this issue, and this is the solution. And once you build this solution, the company will get this result. So what do we do to have this kind of clean enterprise data catalog? So what we do is, first thing first, so we are going to define the categories: classification scheme, ownership structure, catalog features, and compliance controls. Once we have this in place, then the next thing is down to build a catalog. So we have three scenarios here. You know, we have a bank, we have a university, and we have a fintech as well. We're only going to add healthcare as well. So looking at this governance framework, yeah, metadata governance is essential for data discovery, limits. So we are going to build a data governance framework. for a bank. We're going to build it for a university and a fintech. So now this is the first thing is metadata category. Looking at this, we have business under you categorize all the data within the organization. Now we have within the organization, we have business, we'll talk about it when we start to have business metadata, we have technical metadata, and once you classify it, categorize it, you describe it. You say this is business metadata, definition of financial data element, example, account type. Technical metadata, database schema, data format. We say operational metadata, data processing log. And we see data lineage metadata, origin and transformation of financial data. We see security metadata, access permission and classification. And then we see this is just a template we are going to use to build each of these organization. And we see classification scheme. So under here we say classification. We have the first one is categorization, and this one is classification scheme. We say public classification, we classify some data as public. Interest, example, interest rate announcement, meaning that everybody can see it. Some data is classified as internal, meaning that's for internal reports. Some data is confidential. Example, customer financial profile is not for everybody, and we have restricted data, which is like know your customer document and account number. And then we see ownership. We add ownership layer, which here we say roles, chief data officer, responsibility, enterprise metadata governance. We say data owner. We say business definition. This is their responsibility, business definition of data. And we say data steward. And the responsibility is metadata quality maintenance. And we say IT architecture team. And we say technical, this is their responsibility, technical metadata management. So, yeah. And compliance team, this their team, their own is to have regulatory oversight. Okay. And then we'll have data catalog features. Example here for bank, data catalog will say business glossary, data lineage tracking, data discovery search, data set ownership mapping, automated metadata harvesting, and data quality indicators. And compliance control. Compliance control for bank. Here we see bank must enforce control aligned with regulations such as financial, AML, and KYC regulation. And the key control includes sensitive data tagging, data lineage traceability, regulatory reporting metadata, and access audit trial. Access audit trial. So that is it for banking institutions. And for university or schools, this is a framework that can help university. When you are building a framework for university, University manage diverse data set, including students' record, research data, academic performance, staff information. So data category or categorization should look like this. You capture academic metadata, you capture student metadata, and you capture research metadata, administrative metadata, and technical metadata, and you describe all of them. For instance, if we're capturing, if we're categorizing academic metadata, we describe any category. We don't just describe brief description of what that metadata means. Like academic is course detail, program structure, students metadata, application, applicant profile and grade, research metadata, research data set and publication, administrative metadata, HR and finance record, technical metadata, database schema and system log. And then after categorization, we do classification schema. So classification, we classify them under this key classification, like public, whether data is public, internal, confidential. So we say public. Out of these, what are the public? Out of the categories of data we have here, how do we classify them? We see course catalog, courses and program should be public classification, because people can access it, people can view it, people can read about the courses. Internal classification becomes staff meeting report, which is not meant to be public. It means to be circulating within the internal team. If you are not a staff, if you don't have access to it. And confidential, something like students' academic record. So before you can share academic record, there must be some level of control, access control. Yeah, that is classification. And restricted that have something like students' identity document or record. Then ownership, we have who owns all this data and what are their responsibility. And here we have register. Registrar, responsible for student data governance. Research office, responsible for research metadata. That is ownership structure. Now we are adding on the framework. And we have IT department. They are in charge of metadata infrastructure, like building the cataloging. Data steward. Then we'll have your own is for metadata accuracy. So you are the one who build the framework. And compliance officer, education regulations. So you see catalog features. If you are going to build a catalog, what are the features under the university metadata catalog? Should support data dictionary, course metadata mapping, research data registry, student data lineage tracking, and searchable academic data set repository. So this is the feature in data catalog. When you build this with this framework, this is the kind of data catalog you should produce with this feature. And the compliance control should be student data privacy classification, control access to academic record, research data governance policies, and data sharing restriction. Yeah, and then if we come to fintech, this is the kind of framework. Martins, put yourself on mute. When we come to fintech, we want to build a framework for fintech. So this should be the metadata categories. Yeah, we have a customer metadata, transaction metadata, risk metadata, operational metadata, and compliance metadata. And you see all the categories are described very well, like customer is customer identity attributes, transaction is payment and transaction log, risk is fraud risk indicators, operational is system performance metrics, compliance is regulatory reporting field. And then we have classification, we have public, internal, confidential, and restricted, and we'll see which data, which category of data are classified as public product documents, which of them are internal, business analytic data, which of the categories are confidential, customer profile, restricted, know your customer documents and payment credentials. Ownership structure, you'll see chief security, also chief data officer that is responsible for metadata governance leadership, compliance officer responsible for regulatory metadata oversight, data engineer, technical metadata management, data steward, data catalog maintenance, and risk team, fraud and regulatory metadata. So, and then the feature of the catalog we are going to use this framework to build should have API metadata documentation, real-time transaction lineage, data quality scoring, fraud analytics and dataset tagging, automated metadata discovery, compliance control. Under compliance control, we have metadata taggings for sensitive financial data, audit trial for data usage, data retention, metadata, cross-border data transfer tracking. Yeah, that is it for different industries. We'll talk about fintech, we'll talk about bank, we'll talk about education. So you see different framework you can use within these different industries, and the kind of feature, the data catalog you are going to build. You are creating, the first thing you are creating when you want to manage metadata is to create a framework. When you create the framework, what we've just done that we've created a framework. That is number one. That framework is what we're going to use to create a catalog. It's like a rule, a guide. You can't just be creating catalog. You must have a guide, not just a guide, a regulatory and compliance guide, so that any catalog you are building is going to be audit ready and compliant. So cross-industry metadata governance. Here we have a business metadata technical metadata, and operational metadata and governance metadata. So these are cross-industry. When we remove, like this is a generic model that you can apply anywhere. The first three we've talked about, we customize it to industry. But to find out that every industry must contain business metadata, technical metadata, operational metadata, and governance metadata. So yeah, that's all of them. So we've talked about framework now, and we've seen the feature we want to see in the catalog. We've talked about framework. Now we've built a framework. The next thing we are going to do to make your company to be fully compliant is now to build a catalog. So when you build a catalog, then it's now kind of ready. So now is let's implementation of enterprise data catalog. Enterprise data catalog provides a central platform that documents and organizes all data assets across. We are using hospital at this point. So looking at it here, objective is to enable discovery, document data definition and ownership, track data lineage, support regulatory compliance. Okay. Core catalog components. Yeah, you see components here, business, discovery, data lineage, data inventory, metadata repository, ownership registry. So here, each of them, we describe it here, what this component is, and example of what is needed. Like here you see, under business glossary is to define key healthcare data terms. Example, patient's ID, diagnosis code, admission date. Data lineage, track where data originates and how it flows. It comes from patient's registration to EHR to billing. Data inventory lists all data across the system. Example, patient's record database. Metadata repository, technical and business metadata, table structure and schema. Ownership registry, identify responsible team. Data owner for EHR system. EHR system is the system, record management system for any hospitals, healthcares. Example of healthcare data catalog entry, data set name, like patient medical record, source system, EHR, that is electronic health record, and owner, clinical data manager, sensitive layer restricted, steward, health information officer. Okay, after building, this is what is going to, because the main place we build these days, I'm not going to say you are going to use table like this. It's not possible because we cannot store data, but this will help you to build your data catalog in a system. We don't use just table like this to build a data catalog, but this is now listing you. If you are now building a data catalog with this, you know what you are going to build in the data catalog. Data catalog, we use tools, different tools. We have Amazon websites too, and so many other tools, or Colibri we use for data cataloging, which we are going to talk about next week. So now is to map patient data flow. Example of patient data flow from patient registration, electronic health record, to laboratory information system, to billing system, to insurance claim processing, to data warehouse, and then is going to be displayed in the data analytic platform. So data flow mapping table looks like this. You see stage, system, data collected, and the risk associated with that particular data. You see under registration is done on the system, which is a patient portal, and the data that is collected is name, address, insurance information, and risky. What are the risk level here? What can be the risky aspect of it is identity theft. Somebody's identity can be stolen. So if it's risk, that would determine the kind of risk control that will be associating with it. So another stage, the first thing is registration. The second thing is diagnosis. So under diagnosis, what system is going to be electronic health record system, because you already registered. Once registered, the data will be gone into EHR. And during the diagnosis, what are the data that is collected? Medical history and the diagnosis. These are things that are going to be collected during diagnosis. Everything, medical history, blood sample, this and that. These are kind of things that are going to be collected. Risk, health data exposure. These are the kind of risk. You don't need to expose this kind of risk. For instance, somebody is having HIV, somebody is having cancer. These are somebody's record. You don't need to disclose, to expose it. It's a very sensitive data. So unless somebody wanted anybody to know about his health record, the person is left for the person to disclose. So it's a very risky and sensitive. So only consigned parties that should have access. Authorized persons like medical doctor in charge or nurses in charge that should have access to this. Then another area after registration, diagnosis, lab processing, then we have lab system, test results, and another risk aspect is reporting the wrong information. So there should be make sure that we have the right tool to avoid reporting the right test result. Like I said, I've seen a situation, they tell somebody you have cancer, while the person does not have cancer. Whatever, that is a vulnerability, and the data governance officer there should try to look into why such a situation happened and make sure that it does not happen again, because that's not good at all. It doesn't speak good of the data protection or data governance team. Then billing. By the time you've done registration, do your diagnosis, and lab processing, they give you test result. The next thing now, you have to pay. So that's billing. And the system is financial system, payment record. Yeah, while trying to pay, there's some risk here. Somebody can use his credit card to pay and it can be cloned, and so it must have to be protected. So you, data governance officer, you need to put a clause for protection as well. Then analytics. After everything, then the next thing is to show on the dashboard what has been going on. So it depends on what you want to be seen. That's going to be showing on the analytics, and it's going to be through data warehouse and aggregation of patients' data. And risk here is re-identification risk. So looking at all these data mapping, this is how your data map, data catalog should be reading while you have mapped your data into the catalog 2. So monitoring method, data lineage tracking, API monitoring, integration log, security events. So that's how this, and then once you have mapped the data into the data catalog 2, next thing here is classifying high-risk data. Now the data is now in the catalog, it's been cataloged. Yeah, so it's now going to be easy for you to classify high-risk data sets. Looking at this healthcare data still, you see classification, public, internal, confidential, and registered, restricted to high sensitive. So public, non-sensitive information like hospital contacts information should be kind of a public information. Internal should be internal operational data, staff schedules. Confidential should be patients' operational data like appointment record. Restricted, highly sensitive, protected health information like medical record diagnosis. Then example of high risky data sets here is patient medical record. And the risk here is exposure of health information. Insurance data claim, risk fraud, that's the risk. Diagnostic imaging, sensitive medical data, and prescription record, medical misuse. So that is the risk associated with this data when the data has been cataloged. Yeah. Control for high risk data. So you see here, what we have been doing here, we'll gradually digging down to get to how we control sensitive data or high risky data. Because that is the only thing that can put us or put the organization into trouble. We are not so bothered about public data that can even be shared on websites or shared even on social media, like company, like contacts of the organization, or we are not interested. What we are trying to do is to drill down to understand the risky data, metadata, and then build a control around it. So now, control for high risk data. Now we've decided high risk data here. We'll see it here. What do we do? Encryption will be depending on each data. So, and the risk level, we can use encryption. We can use access control. We can use data masking. We can use audits, logging, and restricted sharing policies. These are areas or measures, or call it measures, we can use to safeguard this high-risk data. So, and once you've decided high-risk data is equally important, to assign steward who are going to be in charge, because we've seen that we have high-risk data. So, steward, assigning steward is going to, these are various roles here. We have chief data officer. Responsibility is enterprise data governance leadership. Is the leader, like the HOD of the data governance unit. Data owner. You define data purpose and usage. Yes, part of your job as a data governance officer. Data steward. Maintain data quality and metadata is still your job as a data governance officer. IT security, protect data infrastructure. Yeah, based on the framework you build, the IT team will now know the way. The IT security should now know how they are going to build their cyber security around the data sets. And then compliance officer, ensure regulatory compliance, which is the part of your job as a data governance and protection officer. Yeah, example, stewardship assignments. You see here, patient record. Under patient's record, we have the data owner is the chief medical officer. That's patient's record. Chief medical officer is the owner, and then the data steward is the clinical data steward. Then we have another data set here, lab results. Who owns the lab results? Laboratory director. And who is the steward here? Lab data steward. Now we have billing. Billing data, who owns the billing data? Finance director. And then who is the steward? Financial data steward. So you see different data in the organization. This is, let's say this is hospital. But you can see that not one person owns the data set. Everybody, you must know who owns and assign them. So the medical director, chief medical officer has nothing to do with billing data. So billing data is owned by finance director, and but you, as the data governance officer, can be the steward of all the data here. So that is it. And then implementation roadmap. Implementation roadmap, if you are planning, the first thing under foundation is inventory hospital data, then implement enterprise data catalog, define metadata standard, then under governance, assign owners, steward, implement data classification, enable governance policy, monitoring, implement data lineage, tracking, deploy data quality monitoring, and conduct periodic audits, reports, or governance. So, to summarize it, the difference between metadata and governance, metadata governance and data cataloging, so that you won't confuse. It's important we do not confuse metadata governance framework and metadata cataloging, because if it's not well explained, you can go and build the framework and you think you have finished the work after I've done the framework. No. Or you can go and build a catalog without the framework. Both of them is they go together. They are different documentation. Understanding the difference between data governance framework and data catalog is important because they are related but serve different purposes within data governance. Aspects. Under definition, metadata framework is a policy, set of policies, processes, rules, and standards used for or to manage metadata across the organization. So it's policies, processes, rules, and standards. Cataloging is a tool or system used to organize and discover data sets. Purpose. Metadata governance govern how metadata is created, maintained, and controlled. Cataloging enables searching, discovery, and understanding data. Scope. Governance framework is strategic and organizational. Cataloging is operational and technical. Focus. Metadata governance focuses on governance, ownership, and compliance. Cataloging is to help you discover the data and the documentation. Just to discover. If you go, let me use library again. I've told you, if you go to library, the main thing, all the librarians, they are doing, all those people, chief librarians, library officer working there. All they do is just to classify, create book cataloging all the books in the library so that people can easily find what they are looking. If you come there, you look around, you know where the book you are looking for. Everything is categorized, classified. So this catalog is for easy discovery, data discovery. The other one is for governance, ownership, and compliance. These are two aspects. Components. Governance framework is policies, stewardship rules, classification rules, life cycle control. Then cataloging is metadata repository, search engine, business glossary, lineage visualization, responsibility, governance is for data governance team. Data governance team. Yeah, which is important here so that you know, because very soon some of you want to start building the your boundary. So you see here, want you to pay attention to this particular area. Responsibility within framework. So governance framework is for data governance team, which is me and you. Then data cataloging, data engineers, is technical. This is not documentation, this is technical. Is data engineers, data analysts, and data steward. Data steward tend to be a bit, So, but if you are a good, who can equally, as a data governance team, be a very good steward, but it's technical. But the data governance team call is for, like I told you here, data governance is not technical, it's governance. So outputs, metadata standard and governance process, and then output of cataloging is searchable catalog of data set. So simple analogy, metadata governance, the rules and policies for how books are classified, labeled, and managed. I use book here, just like in library. I mean, that's governance, rules, policies for how books are classified, labeled, and managed. Then data catalog is the library catalog system used to search and locate books, which I've been mentioning. How they work together. Example, metadata governance defines standard, naming convention, data classification rule, ownership structure. The data catalog implements those standards by storing data. So example, governance rule, classify sensitive data. Then catalog implementation, catalog tag data set as restricted. Governance rule, assign data set owner. Then the catalog display the owner of that particular data set. Track data lineage, catalog visualize the flow. Example in hospital, metadata governance, define patient data classification rule, ownership medical data set, assess policies for health record. Catalog, display patient data description, data owner, data lineage, and data sensitivity. In fintech, metadata defines KYC data classification, metadata standards for transaction log, steward responsibility, and data catalog displays transaction data, metadata, API data source, data lineage for fraud analytics, and compliance tag. Visualization and hierarchy, you see here, visualization and the process flow. Data governance as a unit or as a subject, you see data governance. Under data governance, metadata governance. And from metadata governance to data catalog platform, and then to data discovery and usage. So, this is the key takeaway. Metadata governance is the policy and management layer. Data cataloging is the technology that implements and exposes metadata. Metadata governance improves data discovery and transparency. Data catalog enables organizations to understand and trust their data. Data governance defines rules. Cataloging enables access and discovery. Organizations need both to achieve effective data governance. Strong metadata management support compliance, analytics, and AI governance. Organization without metadata governance faces data silo, inconsistent definitions, regulatory risk, inefficiency data discovery. So this is where we ended for tonight, and I hope this will help in grounding you in your career as a data governance. So that's it. This is where we'll end it for tonight. If you had any question, yes, bring it on. I might decide not to even answer anybody any question, because the question I asked, nobody even said anything.
Sorry.
Thank you, sir. We apologize, sir.
I felt I know the answer. I know the thought. No question, everything question cancelled. I'm not taking any question from anybody.
It is well.
So the video is there for you. If you need clarity, go watch the video. Yeah.
We are sorry, sir.
I tell you, side is sick. You tell me I'm as well. All right. Thank you, and see you next week. We are progressing.
Thank you, sir. Have a rest. Thank you, sir.